Honestly, Eleanor, you should have died with him. Camille said it with a smile. A slow, sugar-slicked smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. You clung to that pacemaker and pity party like some tired old barnacle, but let's be real, you're just a wrinkled obstacle. She leaned closer. Her perfume was expensive, cold, suffocating. You've had your empire, your spotlight, your chapters. Now it's our story. I blinked, confused at first. We were standing at the edge of the lake, Lake Orion shimmering in the late September sun. The boat rocked gently beneath us. Her fingers were already around my wrist. Say goodbye to the lake, Eleanor, she whispered. And do it gracefully, for once in your goddamn life. That's when I felt it, the shift. The pressure. Her hands moved from my wrist to my shoulders, and she pushed. Hard. I staggered, my heel caught on the cleat. My body twisted. A sharp, searing jolt shot up my side, my new hip wasn't ready for this. And just like that, I was airborne. Time slowed. The sky above turned into a spinning blur of sun and cloud, and the world went quiet. Not peaceful quiet, funeral quiet. Hollow quiet, the kind of quiet that only happens when your story's about to end. The cold hit like concrete. Lake Orion swallowed me whole. I didn't scream. The breath had already been stolen. I sank. Through the haze of icy darkness, I looked up. And there, framed by the glint of the boat's polished railing, was my son, Ryan. He didn't move. Didn't flinch. Just stood there, watching, while his wife smoothed her hair like we'd finished some awkward toast. Ryan didn't cry. Didn't panic. His eyes met mine for a moment, blank. Empty. And then, the corner of his mouth twitched. Not grief. Approval. That's when I realized, this wasn't a moment of madness. It was a plan. And not my plan. See, we make our little arrangements in life. We stack our calendars, sign our wills, build our legacies. But sometimes, someone else is scripting the bigger story. It wasn't my time to die. Before we dive into the rest of Eleanor's story, if you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. Leave a comment, tell us where you're tuning in from. The places these stories reach? That's the magic. Alright. Let's go back. To the day a woman declared legally dead took her first breath into revenge. The surface broke above me like a lie ripping open. I flailed, boots kicking through heavy, freezing water, my arms weak and screaming. My coat dragged me down. The metal zipper clawed at my throat. My hip throbbed. My heart stammered. I surfaced once, just enough to suck in half a gasp, before the waves slapped me back down. Panic bloomed in my chest. I spun underwater, dizzy, blind. That was it. That was going to be it. Then, faintly, the sound of another boat. Rougher engine. Older. Slower. A rusty red skiff came into view. I barely registered it, just a blur of orange paint and chipped railings. Then came a shout. Grab the rope. Someone leaned over. I felt something slap against my hand, thick, wet nylon. I latched on with the last of my strength. Two figures hauled me in, one older, solid as a tree trunk. The other, wiry, maybe late teens. I collapsed onto the deck, coughing up lake water and the taste of betrayal. Damn, the man muttered, dropping to his knees beside me. You just jumpin' in for fun or you tryin' to die out here? I blinked at him. My throat burned. My voice cracked. No, I gasped. They tried, my son, they tried to kill me. He looked me over, eyes sharp but not shocked. Name's Jack Langley, he said, wrapping me in a wool blanket. This here's my niece, Riley. We were fishin' stripers. But looks like we reeled in a ghost. I gripped his jacket sleeve. You can't tell anyone you found me. Not yet. He tilted his head. That's a hell of a request. I steadied my voice. If they find out I'm alive, they'll finish the job. He nodded slowly. Fair enough. Sometimes the right thing's got nothing to do with the law. I closed my eyes, water still dripping from my lashes. They think I'm dead. Good. Because now? Now I get to plan something, too. For days after my son tried to murder me, I watched him weep over my coffin. It was silver. Polished. Absurdly expensive. I never liked silver. Ryan knew that. He chose it anyway, not for sentiment, but for spectacle. It gleamed under the late morning sun like a trophy. I stood beneath a black veil near the edge of the tree line at Lake Orion Cemetery, hidden behind a column of pine and shadow, a safe distance from the crowd. It was a small miracle the funeral wasn't closed casket. That would have made things too real. But without a body, well, there's no truth to refute, is there? The minister droned on about Eleanor Graves, philanthropist, business pioneer, beloved mother. Every word hit like a slap. I bit the inside of my cheek so hard I tasted iron. The crowd was respectable. Dozens of faces I recognized. A few neighbors from the lake, former board members from Graves Logistics, even the local news crew. Some were truly grieving. Others? Tourists of tragedy. Nothing brings people together like a rich woman's sudden death. But it wasn't the faces I saw that unnerved me. It was the ones I didn't. No Harold Fenley, my personal estate attorney of 15 years. No Sasha Dodd, the financial advisor who helped Thomas and I build our entire investment structure. No Sandra Barnes, my accountant, my gatekeeper, the woman who once had power of attorney when I was in surgery. 3 people who had been integral to my life. People who'd handled billions. People who knew every corner of my estate. Gone. Why? Why wouldn't they come to the funeral of the woman whose fortune paid their salaries for decades? Unless, they already knew. Unless they were part of it. I scanned the crowd again. My eyes landed on Ryan. He stood near the casket with his head bowed, his hands clasped, the picture of composure. Next to him, Camille dabbed at her eyes with a silk handkerchief. It was monogrammed. CWG Camille Westwood Graves. She always did love branding. They were dressed in deep mourning black, tailored to perfection. Camille's makeup was pristine. Ryan's suit probably cost more than I made in my first year of marriage. They looked like royalty receiving condolences, not mourners burying a mother. Reporters stood near the curb, whispering, taking notes. I'd already read their headlines. Tragic drowning of logistics matriarch raises questions of mental health. Son describes months of concern, she wasn't herself. They weren't just grieving. They were crafting. A story. A legacy. A lie. I adjusted my veil. My hands trembled. Not with fear. With fury. The pastor mentioned something about the burden of watching a loved one slip away. I almost laughed. There'd been no slipping. No confusion. No decline. Just manipulation. Calculated, deliberate, cold. I remembered the wrong medication bottles. The accidental calendar changes. Camille forgetting to pass on meeting invites. Ryan claiming I was being paranoid. They weren't just killing me. They were rewriting me. Turning me into a cautionary tale. And the world? It was eating it up. The casket lowered slowly. Camille sniffled into Ryan's shoulder. A photographer zoomed in. Perfect. Then something strange happened. The crowd began to thin, the post-service chatter buzzing like gnats. But one figure lingered near the far row of folding chairs, a woman in a tailored gray coat with a red folder under her arm. She didn't speak to anyone. Didn't offer condolences. Just stood, watching. Then she turned, slipped the folder into a leather bag, and walked briskly toward a black car idling at the edge of the lot. Vivienne Locke. I didn't know her name yet. But I would. I would know everything. Because while Ryan and Camille thought they had buried the past, they forgot to check if the grave was empty. And I wasn't finished. Not even close. I hadn't seen my house in 12 days. Not since the morning I wore a navy coat, a pair of modest heels, and my husband's favorite scarf to a family boat ride that was never meant to end in hugs. Now I was back. Not as the woman of the house. Not even as a guest. As a ghost. We pulled up just after 2 a.m. Jack killed the headlights a block away. I slipped out of the truck wrapped in a dark hoodie, my face bare, my hands sweating despite the chill. The air smelled like pine and memory. Lake Orion lay just beyond the trees, moonlight bouncing off its surface in long, rippling streaks. And there, at the top of the hill, was the house. My house. But it didn't look like mine anymore. The porch light was different. Whiter. Harsher. Like someone had replaced the bulb and didn't care how it clashed with the old fixtures. The wreath on the door was gone. So were the wind chimes Thomas and I bought in Traverse City the year before he died. I moved around to the back, stepping quietly over the flagstone path. The key was still in my pocket, the one nobody ever remembered because Ryan never cared enough to ask for it back. I slipped it into the lock. Held my breath. Turned. Click. The door creaked open. The scent hit me first. Not musty. Not empty. But lived in. Someone had been here. Recently. Frequently. Inside, the lighting was warm and indirect. Too perfect. A timed system. The hallway was staged for real estate photos, except no house listed for sale had that many fresh tulips, or hand-wiped granite counters, and the sound, the low, rhythmic hum of the refrigerator, meant the power had never been shut off. This wasn't a shrine to my memory. This was a home. Their home. I crept down the hallway, past the kitchen and up the main staircase, avoiding the 5th step. It creaked, always had. At the landing, I paused. The hallway was darker here. My heart pounded against my ribs like a warning. Every painting was different. Every photograph was gone. 35 years of marriage. Vacations. Holidays. Grand opening ceremonies. Awards. All of it stripped off the walls like I was a tenant whose lease had expired. But I didn't come back to mourn what I'd lost. I came to find the proof that they had taken it. Thomas's study was at the end of the hallway, the one room no one ever entered without his voice giving permission. Now, the door stood half open. Inside, the smell hit me immediately: stale coffee, printer ink, old paper. The furniture had changed. The rug was gone. The antique clock I gave him on our 20th anniversary had been replaced by a hideous chrome desk lamp. The desk itself was cluttered, far more than Thomas ever allowed. Dozens of papers, open folders, post-it notes. 2 binders lay open, one with clipped pages labeled Asset Pipeline, e.g. my initials. I stepped closer. That's when I saw it. A red folder tucked under a stack of closed laptops, the label handwritten in blocky letters, Operation Grey Veil. I pulled it free, flipped it open, and read. And kept reading. Page after page, detailed, dated, organized. Physician assessments of cognitive deterioration, signed with a name I didn't recognize. Surveillance reports from inside my own home. Notarized declarations claiming I had voluntarily stepped back from all financial responsibility. Signatures that looked like mine, until you really studied the loops. And then came the bank records. 12 offshore accounts opened in the last 10 days. Cayman Islands. Zurich. Singapore. Each under my name. Each connected to a shell corporation with names I'd never approved. All labeled Asset Conversion Phase 1. They hadn't just tried to steal from me. They were becoming me. Rewriting me, reassigning my identity, dollar by dollar, until the world didn't remember the Eleanor who'd built a company with her husband, who survived cancer, who buried him alone. Only a shell, legally dead, financially erased, mentally rewritten. I stood there shaking, staring at the evidence. Then I heard it. A car door outside. Headlights. They were home. I didn't even have time to close the drawer. The headlights swept across the wall of the study like a searchlight. A car door slammed. I froze. Footsteps crunched on the gravel. 2 sets. Ryan and Camille. Voices, muffled but close. I looked around the room. No time to return the folder. I shoved the red file into my coat and backed toward the hall, moving silently, thank God for the plush carpet Thomas never let them replace. By the time their keys scraped the front lock, I was already halfway down the stairs, my shoes in hand. The kitchen lights flicked on behind me as I slipped out the back door and into the garden. Out in the cold again. Barefoot. Heart rattling like loose change in a jar. I didn't stop running until I reached the corner of Cedar and Lily Creek, where Jack's truck waited in the shadows, engine idling. I flung open the door and collapsed into the passenger seat, gasping. He looked at me, really looked at me, and his jaw tightened. You got it? I held up the folder with shaking hands. He didn't say anything. Just stepped on the gas. We drove through back roads in silence for nearly 20 minutes, ending up at a tiny 24-hour diner near Oxford, the kind with cracked leather booths and a jukebox that still plays Tom Petty if you hit it right. That's where I met her. Laura Kincaid. Ex-FBI. Now private investigator for people with more secrets than savings. She was in her early 40s, wore a dark hoodie under a blazer, and looked at me like she'd already read my autopsy report. Jack slid the folder across the table. She didn't touch it. Just stared at me. You sure you're ready for this? She asked. Once I open this, there's no going back to a quiet life. I gave her a smile I hadn't used since Thomas died. That life's been gone since they pushed me into the lake. She opened the folder. Her eyes moved fast. 10 pages in, she let out a low whistle. Gray Veil, she said. Jesus. Haven't heard that codename in years. I straightened. You know it? Laura leaned forward, lowered her voice. There are rumors, old ones, that a firm was doing black market succession planning for the ultra-wealthy. Not killing people. Not directly. But, relocating them. Quietly erasing their decision-making status. Sometimes with their consent. Usually not. Like assisted identity theft? More like preemptive inheritance restructuring, she said flatly. They use insider attorneys, complicit doctors, and shell financial firms. Once the target is declared mentally unfit, they shift the assets, issue a death certificate, and bury the paper trail. She tapped the folder. This is a blueprint. You're lucky you found it. Lucky. I was starting to hate that word. I took a sip of coffee and asked the question that had been chewing at the edge of my mind since the funeral. Who would even have the power to pull this off? The banks? The courts? The doctors? There's so many touch points. Laura held up one finger. One name keeps showing up in these kinds of cases, she said. No criminal record. No convictions. Hell, she's never even had a speeding ticket. But wherever there's smoke. She opened her own folder and slid a photo across to me. Vivienne Locke. I stopped breathing. It was the woman from the funeral. Gray coat. Red folder. Black sedan. She's not just a paper pusher, Laura said. She's the architect. She doesn't just steal from people. She unbuilds them. Wipes their digital identity, scrubs them from financial systems, and hands the keys to the highest bidder. My mouth went dry. Laura continued. She picks families in transition, grief, illness, breakdowns. She finds the weakest heir and builds the pitch. Then it's just a matter of time before the money moves, and the body disappears. I leaned back against the booth. The air in the diner suddenly felt too thick. I wasn't just being stolen from. I was being disassembled. And they were almost finished. Jack looked between us. So what now? We got the plan, the name, the evidence. You go to the police? Laura shook her head. If we go to the cops now, she'll bury the trail. She's done it before. We need more. We need her in the room. Talking. And how do we do that? She turned back to me. We make her think she hasn't finished the job yet. You stay dead, until it's time to resurrect. I stared at my reflection in the diner window. Hair damp from sweat. Wrinkles deeper than they were last week. A woman torn from her own life. They killed Eleanor Graves on paper. But the woman in the booth? She was still writing her ending. And it wasn't going to be kind. Her name was Vivienne Locke. And once I knew it, I saw her everywhere. Not literally. Not in person. She was far too careful for that, but in the margins. In the credits of transactions that shouldn't have existed. In legal documents with too perfect formatting. In the case files Laura slid across the table, one by one. Read them slowly, she'd said. So I did. Case 1, Henry McAllister, 82. Oil man. West Texas. 3 sons. 1 daughter. Developed Parkinson's. Started misplacing documents. His assistant filed for emergency conservatorship for his own safety. Within 6 weeks, the estate was liquidated and restructured. Henry died in his sleep 2 months later. No autopsy requested. Cause of death, natural causes. Vivienne Locke was listed as the transitional consultant on the will update. Case 2, Marjorie Huang, 76. Retired chemist. Never married. $14 million estate in California. Diagnosed with mild cognitive impairment by a neurologist whose license had been suspended in 2018, and reinstated under pressure. Vivienne was the notary on the documents surrendering medical power of attorney. Marjorie died in a fall down her staircase 2 weeks later. She lived in a 1-story home. Case 3, Reverend Samuel Park, 79. Pastor. Beloved by his community. Wife dead, no children, disappeared from his own church's retirement home. Transferred to a private care facility in Nevada. Died 3 days later of acute pneumonia. No one saw the body. The estate, valued at over $6 million, vanished into 6 shell accounts. Each account was managed by a company called Aegis Vestal, headquartered in Delaware. Laura flipped her laptop around. Aegis Vestal's legal administrator? Vivienne Locke. I sat in Jack's garage with those case files spread out around me like tombstones. Coffee had gone cold. My fingers trembled as I flipped another page. I don't understand, I finally said. Why hasn't anyone stopped her? She leaves fingerprints all over everything. Laura folded her arms. Because she doesn't leave blood. She's involved in at least a dozen deaths. And yet none of them are technically crimes, Laura interrupted. At least not in a way that holds up in court. Every signature is clean. Every doctor's note comes from a licensed practitioner. Every transfer is documented. She plays by the rules, but she writes the rules first. That's when it clicked. Vivienne Locke wasn't just manipulating a system. She was the system, a woman who didn't break the law because she never had to. She bent it. Pressed on its joints until it changed shape, until it became unrecognizable. Until it stopped protecting the people it was made for. And she was building something larger than just one inheritance scheme. This is a network, I said aloud. Laura nodded. Exactly. She doesn't just help families. She recruits them. The vulnerable, the greedy, the desperate. She finds the heir willing to cross the line and offers them a blueprint. In exchange, she takes a cut of everything. She opened a new file. This one had my name on it. Eleanor Graves, project status, phase 3. Date of declared death, September 12. Financial conversion, 62% complete. Public sympathy index, high. Media compliance, managed. Legal disruption risk, low. It wasn't just paperwork. It was a scorecard. My life, being graded by a woman I'd never even met. I stared at the line marked legal disruption risk. Low. She thought I was done. Buried. Muted. Good. Let her think it. Let her think she's won. Because when you build an empire on silence, you forget what it sounds like when someone screams. People assume the hardest part about coming back from the dead is staying hidden. It's not. The hardest part is realizing that no one was looking for you. No news alerts. No reward posters. Not a single friend standing outside the police department demanding answers. My attorney hadn't filed anything. My financial advisor had gone completely dark. They hadn't just erased me. They'd made damn sure no one missed me. Laura and I sat across from each other in Jack's workshop 3 nights after I escaped my house. On the workbench between us lay a blueprint, not of a house, not of a company, but of a machine. A human one. A system built of greed, legality, and perfectly timed deaths. At the top of it sat Vivienne Locke. Below her, a ring of private firms with bland names and terrifying power. Aegis Vestal. Meridian Holdings. First Dawn Consulting, all registered in Delaware. All clean. All hollow. And beneath them, people like Howard Nash. My financial advisor of 20 years. He helped Thomas and me choose our first investment property. Sent us hand-signed birthday cards every year. He stood beside me the day I donated to the pediatric wing at St. Jude's. Now his signature authorized 5 of the offshore accounts opened in my name after my death. He's her silent partner, Laura said, flipping through Nash's activity logs. Each of these cases we tracked had someone already inside the victim's circle, a financial gatekeeper, a lawyer, a trustee. They identify the target, feed the intel to Locke, and in return? She turned the page. Massive payouts disguised as legacy fees. Blood money, in legal language. I stared at the paper in silence. Every digit was a betrayal. Jack was pacing nearby, arms crossed. So what's next? You go public? Drop the evidence? No, Laura said, too quickly. Jack stopped. Why not? Because that's what she wants us to do, she explained. If we make this public now, she'll spin it, say Eleanor's a senile old woman suffering delusions. She's already laid the groundwork in the press. Remember the concerns Ryan mentioned? The articles about Eleanor showing signs of confusion? That wasn't random. My blood chilled. She was right. They had primed the narrative. Now, if I resurfaced, it wouldn't be widow faked her death to expose fraud. It would be delusional matriarch reappears, makes unverified claims. They'd turn me into a spectacle. Or worse, a punchline. So what do we do? I asked. Laura leaned in. We make them think they've won. All of them. Ryan, Camille, Locke. You stay dead. You vanish. But behind the scenes? We watch. We collect. We bait. I raised an eyebrow. Bait what? A confession, she said. On tape. On camera. On the record. And how do we get Locke in a room with me? I asked. She's not exactly showing up to book clubs. Laura cracked a rare smile. That's where you come in. The plan was wild. Risky. Possibly fatal. But the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. Locke was a control freak. That much was clear. She didn't leave things to chance, so if I reappeared, alive, unpredictable, she would feel threatened. Threatened enough to step in and clean up the mess herself. We just had to make her believe I was weak. Scared. Desperate for a deal. Later that night, I sat alone with an old photo of Thomas and me, taken on the porch of the lake house in the summer of '93. We looked sunburned, wind-tossed, and ridiculously happy. Back then, we thought building a business meant safety. That success insulated you from the wolves. We were wrong. Wolves don't circle failure. They circle legacy. Before I went to sleep, I made one call. It went to voicemail. Ryan's voice played, casual, smooth, well-practiced. I waited for the beep. Then, calmly, I said, "Ryan. It's Mom." Pause. "I think we need to talk." When you walk into a room full of people who think you're dead, time does something strange. It bends. Stretches. Like the universe itself is holding its breath. I stepped over the threshold of my lake house, my former lake house, at exactly 7:03 p.m. My heels clicked once against the wood floor. That sound echoed like a gunshot. And then everything was still. Ryan stood in the foyer holding a tumbler of whiskey, halfway to his lips. Camille sat stiffly on the edge of the velvet couch, her legs crossed, posture perfect. She was wearing all black, again. Only this time, not for performance. Her face blanched. Ryan dropped the glass. It shattered at his feet. I smiled. "Hello, darling," I said softly. "Did you miss me?" Camille made a sound between a sob and a scream. Her hand flew to her mouth. She didn't stand. Couldn't. I watched the blood drain from her cheeks like someone had pulled a plug. Ryan stared at me as if I'd crawled out of the lake that very moment, waterlogged and bloated and impossible. He took a shaky step forward. "Mom." That was all he managed. I stepped further inside, the hem of my coat brushing the rug I had picked out 20 years ago. It had survived longer in this house than I had. "Surprised to see me?" I asked. No one answered. So I kept walking, past the foyer, through the hall, into the heart of the house. Into the study. Where the real rot lived. The room was cleaned up since my last visit, the red folder gone, the desk cleared, every surface spotless. Too spotless. They'd erased the evidence. I expected that. What they hadn't expected, was me. Behind me, I heard Camille whisper, "Ryan, she's not supposed to." "I know," he snapped. "I know." They followed me in, flanking me like nervous bodyguards. You're not well," Ryan tried, his voice shaking. "You've been confused for months." "I told you. Remember the lake? You slipped. You fell." "I didn't slip," I said calmly. "I was pushed." Camille gasped. Ryan's eyes flickered to the camera on the bookshelf, one of the little nanny cams hidden inside what looked like an old hardcover. He didn't know I knew it was there. He didn't know it had been replaced. That every word was now being recorded, and streamed live to a secure folder in Laura's cloud. I kept my voice steady. "You know what I found in this room, Ryan?" "Do you?" He said nothing. "Operation Grey Veil," I continued. "Dozens of offshore accounts. Fake signatures. Staged incompetence filings. You didn't just try to kill me. You tried to unmake me." Ryan's face twisted, into what, I couldn't tell. Anger? Guilt? Or maybe just the realization that he wasn't the one in control anymore. Camille folded her arms. "You have no proof," she said flatly. "You're just a crazy old woman who wandered off and came back spinning stories." That's when another voice entered the room. Smooth. Controlled. Lethal. "That's enough, Camille." We all turned. Vivienne Locke stepped into the study like a black and white photograph had come to life. Tailored charcoal suit. Pearl earrings. Thin smile. A leather portfolio tucked beneath one arm. Her presence changed the air. Thicker. Colder. She set the folder gently on the desk and looked at me as if I were a mildly inconvenient tax return. "Mrs. Graves," she said evenly. How unexpected. I stared at her. Let the silence breathe. "You're real," I said. For a while I wasn't sure. Her smile didn't move. "And here I thought you were done surprising people." She took a seat in the very chair Thomas used to occupy. Like she owned it. "Let's not waste time," Vivienne said. "I'm not here to argue ethics. I'm here to make this go away. Quietly. Permanently. For everyone's sake, including yours. She opened the folder and slid a sheet of paper toward me. It was a settlement agreement. My name was typed at the top. She'd already filled in the blanks. $50 million. In exchange for disappearing, again. No press. No lawsuits. No interviews. Just, vanish. She folded her hands. This is your last and only offer, Eleanor. Take it, and walk away. I looked down at the paper. Then up at Ryan. Then at Vivienne. And smiled. I didn't touch the offer. Didn't even flinch. I let it sit there on the desk, the $50 million bribe dressed up in Times New Roman, and watched Vivienne Locke watch me. Her eyes were like ice in a crystal glass. Cold, clear, and always still. I leaned back in the chair Thomas once used, the same one she'd just claimed with that little corporate queen maneuver. Funny. All those years, I thought power meant something you earned. Turns out it's just something you take when no one stops you. I folded my hands. You've done this before. Her expression didn't change. Not even a blink. Many times, she said. Ryan shifted beside her. Camille didn't move, she was staring at the rug like she could fall through it if she focused hard enough. You make people disappear, I continued. Not with poison or bullets. With paperwork. You kill them on paper. You rewrite their lives. And you justify it with numbers. Vivienne tilted her head slightly, like I was a mildly entertaining distraction. I prefer the term estate acceleration, she said. We simply help facilitate transitions. Wealth moves faster. The next generation doesn't have to wait for nature to do its slow, inconvenient job. Conveniently, I said, the elder in question dies just after the transition is complete. She smiled, gently, professionally. Coincidences happen. My blood was simmering beneath my skin. But I kept my tone even. You forge diagnoses. You stage incidents. You feed heirs just enough poison to make them believe it's mercy. Vivienne glanced at Ryan. Some of them don't need convincing. He looked away. You think you're helping people, I said. No, she corrected. I know I am. People come to me. Families. Fractured, messy, drowning in obligation. I provide order. Resolution. Wealth redistribution with dignity. Clean hands. No violence. Just, signatures. I leaned forward, voice sharp now. You're not a facilitator. You're a predator. You hunt the lonely. The old. The grieving. And yet here you are, she said calmly. Not dead. Not disappeared. Not grieving. She tapped the paper again. $50 million. Enough to start over anywhere. A quiet life. You walk away, and no one ever bothers you again. And if I don't? Her smile didn't waver. Then? I suppose the world learns that Eleanor Graves is alive and mentally unstable, that the dementia we warned everyone about has now progressed into full-blown delusion. They'll find you somewhere, naked, crying, screaming about conspiracies, and they'll institutionalize you. Publicly. Permanently. She tilted her head. And this time, no fishing boat to save you. For a moment, the only sound in the room was the tick of the antique desk clock behind me. Then I reached down to my purse. Unzipped it slowly. And pulled out the recorder. The red light blinked steadily. Vivienne's face went still. So did Camille's. Ryan's mouth dropped open. I stood, holding the device in both hands like a communion offering. You're not the only one who knows how to structure a clean exit. Vivienne's eyes narrowed. Her mask cracked, barely, but it cracked. You think a little recording is going to stop me? No, I said softly. But it's not the only one. She blinked. Behind the bookshelf, behind the air vent grill, behind the baseboard of the fireplace, 3 separate hidden microphones had already uploaded her monologue to Laura's cloud archive in real time. Every word. Every admission. Every piece of her soulless manifesto. I took a step closer. You built an empire on silence. But you forgot one thing. Vivienne's voice dropped, cold and lethal now. What? I smiled. Dead women don't stay quiet forever. That's when the windows shattered. First one. Then two. Then the front door burst open. The first glass window shattered behind me like a gunshot. The second exploded outward as the front door burst open with a thunderclap of splinters. But it wasn't the police. It wasn't federal agents. And it wasn't anyone on our side. He moved like smoke, tall, thin, mid-50s, in a black jacket zipped to the throat, unarmed at first glance, but he didn't need a weapon to be terrifying. There was something surgical in his movement, like his very presence was designed to remove people. Cleanly. Permanently. Vivienne didn't flinch. Not even when the man stepped fully into the study and closed the broken door behind him with a soft click. She turned to him. Tobias. That was all she said. He gave her the slightest nod, then turned to me. His eyes were the color of glass, clear, unreadable, soulless. You weren't supposed to last this long, he said to me, like he was reading from a post-mortem. Ryan backed away. Camille made a tiny squeaking sound, like a balloon deflating slowly, and melted into the corner of the room. No fight left. No loyalty either. Tobias stepped forward and spoke again, this time to Vivienne. She's already uploaded the audio. Vivienne's face darkened. Then we neutralize her and burn the rest. You really shouldn't be alive, Eleanor, Tobias said, almost kindly. You make this very messy. The moment cracked open in a blur. Jack's voice screamed from outside, now. A second later, another window shattered. Smoke bomb. Dense and white. I hit the floor as instinct took over, rolling behind the desk just before the room went blind. Through the coughing and panic, I heard shouts, 3 male voices, 1 female, then the sound of struggle. Furniture crashing. A gunshot cracked the air, followed by a scream that wasn't mine. I felt a hand grab my arm, rough and fast. Move. Laura hissed into my ear, dragging me toward the hallway. We ran. Through the haze. Through the screaming. Through the chaos. Down the back staircase and into the cold night, where Jack's truck idled behind the shed. He yanked the door open as we dove inside. Go, go, go. He hit the gas. We didn't stop moving until the lake house was a distant silhouette behind us, just outlines, smoke, and blue lights blinking in the distance. 20 minutes later, we were hidden again, in a motel off the highway, too cheap for business travelers, too clean for long haulers. Laura checked the camera feeds. Only one uploaded successfully. The rest? Scrambled. Burned. Encrypted midstream by an external signal. That wasn't just interference, Laura said grimly. That was a kill code. They disabled our backups mid-transfer. Tobias knew the system. She slammed her laptop shut. They'd done this before. I stared at the wall. Still trembling. Vivienne had planned for our plan. She knew we'd come. She knew the risks. But what chilled me most wasn't that she'd sent Tobias to handle me. It was that she hadn't panicked. Not once. She knew what I still didn't, this wasn't the end of her operation. It was barely a bruise. Back in the truck, Jack lit a cigarette, first one I'd ever seen him smoke. His hands were shaking. His eyes didn't leave the road. That man, he said, the one in black. Tobias, I said. Jack nodded slowly. He used to work for the DOJ. Black site cleanup. Went private a few years back. No one talks about him because most of the people who've seen him don't get to talk. I said nothing. Just stared at my reflection in the window. Older than I remembered. Harder than I'd ever imagined. In the silence, Laura handed me a new folder. It wasn't about me this time. Not my accounts. Not my name. It was a dossier on Vivienne's broader operation, a new list of names. Clients. Silent partners. Executors. Every one of them connected to suspicious deaths, erased elders, and legacy transfers. Dozens. Maybe hundreds. Laura looked me dead in the eye. This isn't about revenge anymore. She tapped the list. This is about every person they've buried. Every dollar they've stolen. Every legacy they've rewritten. She paused. And it's still happening. Right now. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat up staring at the motel ceiling. I realized the truth. Vivienne didn't make mistakes, she made successors. At 3:12 a.m. in Jack's fortified workshop, Laura slid me a flash drive. Inside, Tier 1 confirmed partnerships. PDFs, ledgers. Names. Each stamped with 2 fields, silent partner and executor. McAllister. Huang. Park. Then the one I wasn't ready for. Eleanor Graves. Silent partner, Howard E. Nash. Howard. My advisor. My friend. The man who built my trust with Thomas, who toasted me at my retirement. Now listed in the plan to erase me. Attached, a consent form giving him my estate, and a note from Locke promising him $3.1 million for his discretion. I stepped outside. The stars felt cruel. Do you know what betrayal sounds like? I asked Jack. It's someone toasting your health, while cashing in your death. The studio was bare, lights glaring, a mic taped to my chest. Across from me sat Madison Decker, young, sharp, unbought. You're sure? She asked. I nodded. If I disappear, release everything. The red light blinked. I spoke names, McAllister. Huang. Park. Graves. People declared dead while their wealth was stolen. Offshore accounts. Fake diagnoses. Signatures I never made. Then I said it, Vivienne Locke did this. She calls herself a legacy consultant, I told the camera. But what she runs is erasure. Families recruited, paper trails built, fortunes stripped. She doesn't solve problems, she manufactures them. I leaned forward. Check the signatures. The dates. And ask yourself, where did the money go? The stream ended without music. Just a line. For full documentation, visit thegrefiles.org. Within hours, millions had seen it. Hashtag surged, hashtag Greyfiles. Hashtag executor empire. Hashtag Eleanor is alive. At 3 a.m. Laura burst in. She ran. Office packed. Accounts wiped. She showed me footage, Locke stepping into a black car, folder in hand, calm as ever. She's not finished, I said. No, Laura agreed. But she's cornered. Then her phone buzzed. 4 words, midnight. Lake House. Come alone. Laura slammed it down. That's suicide. Jack shook his head. You've already won. But Locke didn't beg. She calculated. And the lake house wasn't a place, it was her symbol. I'm going, I said. They argued. I let them, then unzipped a pouch, burner phone, beacon, lapel mic. Jack's jaw tightened. If you're not out by 12:40. Come in loud, I finished. The lake house waited. No lights, no cars, moon cutting the water like glass. The dock creaked beneath me. Vivienne opened the door herself, dressed in gray silk, fire burning behind her. I assume you're wired. You assume correctly. Good. I want them to hear. She stayed standing. Saturday, you think exposing me matters, she said. Outrage fades. Someone else will rebuild my model. The demand never dies. Then she pulled a gun. Not at me. At herself. I die here, I control the story. But you? You lit the match. Vivienne, I said softly. Her eyes flickered. Fear. You don't get to write the ending. I pressed play. Tobias's voice filled the room. If she doesn't kill the Graves woman, this collapses. Then her own, then do it. No loose ends. Her hand shook. The gun slipped. For the first time, Vivienne Locke was silent. After 2 weeks at my lake house. Outside, dawn was breaking. The first light spilled across the lake as if the world itself was exhaling. By sunrise, I was back with Jack and Laura. We stood together, watching the horizon blaze with color. The ledger was closed. The machine dismantled. I hadn't been erased. I had endured. And this time, the future belonged to me.